Ralph Lauren's Ralph Club Elixir is the best of all the flankers. Stay tuned. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel, Aromatics. Today we're going to be talking about the newest flanker from Ralph's Club, and this is Ralph's Club Elixir, or I should say from Ralph Lauren. Before we get started, I want to make it very clear. I'm not going to overhype this fragrance because it's nothing groundbreaking. Does it smell good? Yes, it smells fantastic. There hasn't been a fragrance that uses iris in this fashion in quite some time, at least in the stores, department stores, and most of the mass designers. This one does. And so for me, I was immediately inclined to gravitate towards this fragrance, and I did, and I loved it. And on the first impression, I was sold immediately. Why? Because of that iris. Iris can have multiple different traits and qualities, and for the most part, I'm going to stick to the two descriptions. There is a Florentine iris, which goes in the more traditional floral way, and it just smells like nice powdery nuances that give you some kind of floral undertones. And then you have like this more fantasy type of iris, which really resembles or draws something a little bit more rooty. It's thicker, it's denser, almost has the same texture or quality of something like literally a flower's roots. For more descriptive type of characteristic, think of like the quality of a mushroom. That's essentially what you get. So a couple of notes that draw this fantasy iris would include something like orris root. Sometimes carrot seeds can resemble the same feeling or vibe of that. Not necessarily going to go too much towards the floral type of things, but it can be considered under that same nuance family. So this iris that's used in this one gave me a little bit of both. It was a little bit unusual. And this is one of those fragrances which very uncommonly gave me a different experience when worn on skin and when worn on clothing. Now I know for the most part you do get different experiences on skin and on clothing, but not this drastic. So that's what I mean by uncommon as far as the experience that I got on skin versus on clothing. So of course, every time that I sprayed on skin, it is a little bit different, but not to this extreme. So the first time that I walked into the store and smelled this on a tester strip, I was immediately sold because I got that fantasy iris. And the fantasy iris, or the orris root rather, that's what's used in here, is more so like this. It smells almost, gentlemen, like lipstick. And for whatever reason, it's sexy, especially as your nose develops. For most people, maybe not everybody, I can at least speak for me, becomes sexy, becomes very addicting. When I sprayed this on a tester strip, I got everything that I loved about that buttery iris with the lipstick, makeup bag type of vibe, and I was immediately sold. So when I got home, I did my first impressions. I started taking a look at some of the notes, which were kind of hidden at the beginning. I'm not sure if it's more available now, but it probably is, so I'll go ahead and list it on screen. When you see the initial picture of the way that they present the elixir, you're going to see iris, patchouli, incense. You're not going to see orris root. But then when you look down in the actual description of the notes, you're going to see orris butter or orris root. And so that just goes back to reiterate what I said about them being in the same family. So sometimes they're used interchangeably when they can just really be doing the same thing. So a lot of people do take the notes, as they say it, just 100%, but really that's not the reality of the way that fragrances work, nor the way that these perfumers or just perfumes in general are composed. So when I sprayed this on skin, I got more of this Florentine type of iris. I did get just an undertone of that fantasy iris, not so much. It was about maybe 80% floral and 20%, just a hint of that makeup. But as soon as I sprayed this on clothing, a couple of hours after I did the first impression, it was a whole different experience. So when I first went into this blindly, I didn't know that there was sage. I didn't know that there was any of the other notes, but I could absolutely sense some sage, some geranium, some of that incense and leather. So basically, I ended up wearing this the very next day and for a couple of days. And this is what I have to say about this fragrance. In the opening of this fragrance on skin, I got mostly this bitter grapefruit and sage. It was very aromatic, and I got this undertone of this Florentine iris. It was more so floral, but like I said, still some hints of that iris, the makeup bag. On clothing, it was grapefruit, sage, and the star was the iris. It was that makeup bag vibe with still some floral undertones. It was all about the iris, and I fell in love with that. So in the opening on skin versus on clothing, the iris is really what differs, and that grapefruit. On skin, way more grapefruit and a bit more bitter, and sage. On clothing, much more about the iris with the undertone of that grapefruit and the sage. So sage is carrying or lifting this iris note, and it's much more of a makeup. As we started to get into the dry down, I could sense something that was sharp, it was floral and aromatic at the same time. And in my experience, that usually describes geranium. So if you were to ask me to translate geranium from a scent into a texture, I would call it crunchy. It does kind of, in my experience, make fragrances seem a little bit more mature because of the fact that in older perfumery, geranium was extremely common. Geranium and carnation. So it does add this nice floral type of quality, which I think also helps make this one project off of my skin. So the projection with this one is actually really not bad. Shortly after you get that geranium, it becomes a star-focused fragrance around the olibanum and that leather. And the leather specifically is tan. And I wanted to say tan because of the fact that it's not a bold or deep or dense leather, at least not to me. So when I think of dense leathers, I'm thinking of a fragrance that might be something from Memo Paris, that African leather, just something animalic, something that's really bold and dense. This one seems a bit safer, maybe even the same color of something like Armani Code Profumo, just in terms of that leather. It doesn't have any of the same sweetness or any of that same Mandarin, but the same texture of the leather. So we have this tan leather with olibanum and that incense. And the incense really draws this picture of burning frankincense. So for those of you that are from the Middle East, I'm sure you know what burning frankincense smells like. It's a practice that we have in the Middle East, and I myself practice as well. And if you follow me on Instagram, you've likely seen me burn some of this incense. And what it does is it neutralizes the odors in the house, and it's believed for centuries to have healing properties, which I regularly partake in. And I can definitely say that it does absolutely shine in this fragrance, and it's nostalgic for me, so it's no surprise that I gravitated to this one at all. And basically what this olibanum, or luban in Arabic, which is essentially frankincense, smells like is this balsamic resin. Balsamic, what does that mean? It's a little bit acidic. So you're gonna get like this acidic tree sap type of feeling with that incense. So it literally smells like you have the luban or the olibanum or the dhakar just being burned like bakhur. I want to make sure that you guys don't think that this is too smoky or anything like that. It's incense. It's a clean incense. There is no flame to the burning of this frankincense. It's just a pure olibanum that is lit and just producing some of its incense. So in the dry down, what ends up happening with this fragrance is you still have that aromatic sage, which in my opinion doesn't really go anywhere, but it does tone down significantly. The iris also does tone down significantly. The makeup bag vibe by the dry down is almost completely gone. Then you don't have any more of that citrus, and what it becomes is strictly olibanum that's burning its incense. So basically bakhur of luban or dhakar, and that tan leather. Overall, not bad of a fragrance. It's definitely the most interesting of them all. Underneath the whole thing, you can kind of see or smell the shadow of its predecessors. You do get the shadow of a blue fragrance, but it's not bad blue at all. I know there's also that patchouli note that's listed, and you do kind of pick up the patchouli throughout the entirety of the fragrance, but it didn't really become the center of the focus of the fragrance, at least for my nose. For my nose, this was all about that balsamic resin, the iris, the leather, and the incense. Definitely still not groundbreaking, but it's really nice. For those of you that are more rooted in the eastern parts of the world and you're more familiar with olibanum, frankincense, leather, you like those bolder fragrances, you're not really into too much of the blue fragrances, you don't mind them, you're gonna appreciate this one a lot more. If you like leather fragrances, iris, you like darker fragrances like myself, you will gravitate towards this one more. But for the mass, I don't think they're going to gravitate towards this one more, but I don't have a mass appeal taste, to be honest with you guys. And so if you don't as well, then this one you're going to gravitate towards more. Not saying you're going to fall in love with it, but you're going to enjoy this one more than most of them. Ralph's Club Elixir was solid, and I'm surprised that I had this much to say about a designer fragrance, but it really is that interesting, especially when it comes to other designers. If you've tried out this fragrance, or if you've been thinking about trying out this fragrance, let me know what you think. Also, I want to know how many of you actually like the mass appealing fragrances. How many of you guys think that you like the blue fragrances and you watch a review and you're like, it's all blue and it's great and it's a fantastic fragrance, and you go and smell it and it's just something generic, and then you get disappointed? Because I've been there. A lot of the cases when people love a fragrance and it's all the hype and rage, I go and sniff it and I'm just bored. So for me, my personal taste is darker, denser, and bolder. And if that's your taste as well, then I think you should absolutely check this one out. If you enjoyed watching this video and you want to watch videos like this and more, scroll down, hit that like button and the subscribe. They're both free. And until the next one, peace.